Hi, I'm John Wallace.
I'm Rich Stone.
And we're here at Leaf Only in Middletown, Connecticut, and we're going to talk to you today a little bit about the cigar wrappers, different types. Now, before we get into the different types of wrappers, which I'm sure you've probably heard names like Maduro, Oscuro, Colorado, things like that, I want to really briefly talk about Connecticut tobacco. Well, we're here in Middletown, Connecticut. We know about Connecticut tobacco, and there's a lot of misunderstanding when it comes to Connecticut tobacco. First of all, first thing you need to know about Connecticut tobacco is that there's two kinds. There's Connecticut broadleaf, and then there's Connecticut shade leaf. They're incredibly different. They're nothing alike at all. Totally two different types of leaves, two different types of cigars. So here, I have Connecticut shade. As you can see, very light, it's extremely thin, and I think the most expensive tobacco leaf in the world. The reason it is because if you've ever seen the fields, it's grown under cheesecloth. It's a very expensive operation. They set up the cheesecloth all over the entire field where the stuff is grown. Sunlight is diffused, it barely gets in, so it produces a very thin leaf. It's very labor intensive, but it's a really nice leaf. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got, where's the labels on these? I think this is it right here.
We got two LS here.
Okay. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got Connecticut broadleaf. As you can see here, this is a much thicker, darker, larger leaf. This is grown in the open sun. It's still expensive, but it's not as expensive as Connecticut shade. And those are the two types of leaves grown in Connecticut. They're both made for cigars. So since I'm on Connecticut broadleaf and I've got it in front of me, this is actually a Maduro, a Connecticut Maduro, also known as a 1DW or a number 1 dark wrapper. I think we retail it for around 30 and change a pound.
$31.99 or something.
And it's a, Maduro is a dark wrapper. It's almost interchangeable with Oscuro. Some people think Oscuro is a little bit darker, you know, almost black. And this is a Maduro. It's still very dark, one of the darkest you can get.
One thing I wanted to add is actually Maduro range a lot. You know, you hear Maduro and a lot of people think dark, but Maduros can actually go from being reddish to the darker color. They can actually go from being sweeter to fuller in flavor. So Maduro kind of does have a wide range, where Oscuro is a little more singular. It's going to be very dark, you know, very dark in color. The Maduro, again, has more of a wider range with it. It does get fermented a little bit longer, and again, it's on the top of the plant, so it usually does have a lot of sunlight, but it will vary in range and color.
And one thing to keep in mind is that there's slang terms. I mean, everyone's got a little bit of a different understanding of what it is. You know, this is just generally speaking. You know, you can't hold us to these words. This is what all of America uses and all of the world uses to describe these types of leaves. Doesn't mean it's exactly the same to everyone you ask. And now Rich talked really briefly about fermentation, and that actually makes a big difference on the color of tobacco. You know, this same leaf here, it's already pretty dark, but if I wanted to make it darker, all it would really take is heat and moisture, and this would get several shades darker. So that's something to keep in mind, that, you know, it's not just, oh, I picked it, I cured it, and here it is. It can actually change in color over time, and that's part of the aging process as well, and what a lot of cigar manufacturers do after they roll the cigar, they'll age the cigar, and that adds to the color as well. So we covered Oscuro. That's like almost black if you can get it. This would turn to an Oscuro if you aged it a little longer and fermented it. This would be a Maduro. And then you've got your medium wrappers, like here's an example, I suppose, of a decent medium wrapper.
Again, one thing I just want to add while John's getting the leaf out, Connecticut leaves get done a little bit differently. He was talking about the broadleaves. The broadleaves, they actually do use one plant for all the different Connecticut leaves that you can talk about. So this one broadleaf plant will have the 1DW Maduro, will have the medium leaves, will have the broadleaf, the binders, it will have the 1 long seconds. You know, they range it and pick it from the different locations on the plant, and that's where they get these different types and different grades. Now, a lot of other wrapper leaves usually don't always get picked like that. Filler leaves do, which is, you know, very common. As far as wrapper leaves, a lot of wrapper leaves usually just use the whole plant and they just grade it, either wrapper grade, binder grade, scrap grades, whatever it is. And that's why a lot of other wrappers can really vary in range from colors and thickness, because they're using the whole plant, and it's just a grading factor for it. Where Connecticut does specifically do it on sections of the plant, so it's going to be a little more consistent with color and size.
Yep, and you know, some different wrappers will do that, but generally speaking, yeah, it's you know, Connecticut really takes the time to separate it. So this is a medium. This is actually a Pennsylvania wrapper. I would probably call this a Colorado, you know, something like that.
Reddish in color, maybe a little light. You know, it's on the edge of Colorado Clara.
It's a medium leaf.
Yeah.
It's good though. I mean, it's nice. It really is a nice medium smoke, and this is actually one of my favorite leaves here that we have. The smell is just wonderful. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I briefly showed you some Connecticut shade. We've also got an Ecuadorian shade here that's a little bit lighter. Actually, this is a Havana. This is a Havana leaf. This is grown in Connecticut. It's not a broadleaf. There's only one farmer that we know of that makes this, and it's actually primed, which means it's picked as it's growing, and it produces a nice light wrapper, but it's still thick and leathery and heavy like the broadleaf.
The reason why it's called the Havana leaf is because it's a Cuban seed that got, you know, bred up here in Connecticut. So since we can't get Cuban leaves and can't get some of the Cuban stuff, what they do is they get the Cuban seeds and then they grow them in different locations, and then they'll even crossbreed them with some of the, you know, the local seeds that we have. So that's why you'll get a Connecticut Havana primed or Connecticut Havana leaves.
So this is actually the Ecuador here, and I only noticed it once I felt it because the Ecuadorian shade is a lot thinner than the Havana. And interesting fact about the Ecuadorian shade is, unlike Connecticut, it's not actually grown under these elaborate cheesecloths to diffuse the sunlight, but because of the altitude in Ecuador and where they grow the tobacco, the sunlight is diffused naturally in the clouds. So basically this stuff is grown in a cloud all year round, and that's why it's so thin and light. And this is actually a little bit darker than what we usually see. It could be that it was moist and in the bag for a while, might have gotten a couple shades darker, but this is getting towards the lighter of the tobacco leaves. And then the extreme end of the spectrum is the Connecticut shade leaf here.
Yeah, Connecticut shades now, like John was saying, these ones are actually grown in the shade. They have either a linen or a cheesecloth that is hung over the leaves and the plants, and really no direct sunlight ever touches these leaves in the growing process. That's how you get this really light color. It's very thin. Connecticut leaves, Connecticut shade leaves are probably, like John was saying earlier on, some of the most expensive per pound leaf we've seen. And it's also one of the hardest and most sought after too. Again, it gets sent to the Dominican Republic for sorting, for grading and stuff like that, but it's all grown in Connecticut. And then to actually get the leaf afterwards is, like I was saying earlier on, you usually just have to import it because, again, everything gets sorted and graded down in for them.
One thing to keep in mind about the expensive Connecticut shade is that, yes, it's the most expensive leaf per pound, but because it's so thin and light, I mean, you'll usually get over 100 leaves per pound. So when you actually look at it on a cigar by cigar basis, it's really not that much more expensive than any of the other leaves. It's just by the pound. It is very expensive, and it's quite rare.
And even the big manufacturers decide to buy this just because of that same reason. They get so many leaves per pound, and you know, when they're buying a large amount, they get a little more aggressive with the price, but because they get so many leaves per pound, it really stretches out, and a lot of the big manufacturers actually buy a lot of the stuff right away as soon as it's available.
Yep. So, you know, I don't want to go too deep into, you know, the different wrappers and how they're grown in the different colors versus how they're grading. You know, we just make too long of a video, but hopefully we gave you, you know, a good overview of the different types of wrappers that we have here at Leaf Only, and also the different types of wrappers that are grown worldwide. You know, the classifications, Oscuro, Maduro, things like that, and hopefully you enjoyed it.
To learn more about Leaf Only, please visit us at leafonly.com, and thanks for watching Cigar TV. Light it up.